Ladies, gentlemen, and haradrim of all ages, it's an eventful day in Diablo 4 with the official and full release of patch 2.0.3 into the game. This is a pretty major patch considering it's hitting just over 1 week into the season, and of course it aims to fix quite a lot of different things in the game. Of course, a lot of it is bug fixes that affect singular quests or strange interactions, and a lot of players won't be affected a whole lot by these things. But there are some pretty big changes coming to larger systems in the game, and without proper specifics in the notes, I thought it would be a pretty good idea to just tell you all how it's looking now a few hours after the patch is released. First up then, let's talk about the Lilith bug, where she was supposed to drop a resplendent spark on your first Echo of Lilith kill this season, and she has not done so for quite a lot of people. For a lot of other people, she actually did. The devs have said that this would be fixed in this patch, and not only would this be working from this point forward for anyone who gets their first kill after the patch, but also that it would retroactively just give a spark to anyone who had already killed her in this season and not gotten one. As someone who didn't have the spark drop originally for my first kill, I can confirm they did just apply a bonus spark to people's accounts, as I did gain one right after the patch happened, so I'm pretty happy to see that. It also is helping me towards interacting with our next entry when I can, the Shroud of False Death. There were a number of items inaccessible from the start of the season and the expansion launch: the Agile Wolf aspect for Druids, the Azurewrath unique sword, and the Frostburn unique gloves, and then also the Shroud of False Death, which is a brand new Mythic unique this season, looking to be quite impactful for pretty much every class for one build or another. The main thing that this gives, if you ignore all of the rest of the item text for a moment, and honestly you sort of can, is the implicit affix, plus 1 rank to all passives. Especially after the skill tree changes this season, which did just add even more passives, this is sort of insane in what it can do for your build. Just for an example of what this gives you on Spiritborn in total, with simplified terms as much as possible, just literally talking about the survivability and offense that it adds without getting into specifics, because it would just take us minutes to do so, it's about 85% multiplicative damage increase that can be used coherently together in current meta build styles, as well as 3% of your movement speed as damage, which if you hit the 200% move speed cap, would be 6% more damage, up to like 91% multiplicative damage from the chest piece implicit by itself. Not to mention, you also gain damage for your next skill after an evade, which is a bit harder to quantify, and for survivability, it's around 27% damage reduction, factoring in somewhat average players will hit around 15 maximum resolve stacks, but it can go way higher than that too if you focus them, which some builds do more than others. 10% block chance, which also turns into more damage in most builds, 1% maximum life as barrier per second, 15% poison resistance, 3% maximum poison resistance, 5% maximum life increase, an evade charge, increased crowd control duration, and then finally also 2% maximum life heal per hit with ultimate skills, and 2 seconds of unstoppable after casting an ultimate, and an extra 10 maximum resource, which is actually a big deal for a number of the big popular Spiritborn builds. In other words, this one tiny line of text in the implicit affix of the item adds an insane amount of value to it before you even get to the rest of what it says, which in comparison is honestly somewhat lackluster. I spent a bit longer than I meant to in that section, but this item is super important. I wanted to make that very clear. It is shiny and new as well, and with 2.0.3 it is being added back into the game along with the other items that were stuck out. That said, this was delayed from launch of the patch itself immediately, so we have only actually just gotten access to these about an hour before this video is going to go up. So this is also sort of your notification that these items officially exist again in Diablo 4, and you can craft Shroud of False Death for the first time on live servers if you'd like to. And personally, I'm quite excited about it myself, especially testing and shoving it into various Spiritborn builds to see what it can improve and by just how much. So stay tuned for that in the coming days if you are interested too. The next big major thing then is Rawhide and Iron Chunk drop rates. There is always a bottlenecked material in Diablo 4. It's hard to have that not exist just because of the way that games like this work, but the worst versions of it are when it is either a material that is just unfun to farm, or so difficult to farm in decent quantities that it feels like a ridiculous time spent to reward ratio. Right at the start of this season, a lot of the faster players found this to be Forgotten Souls, which is useful for re-rolling your masterworking or for masterworking ancestral items, or honestly doing any sort of crafting with ancestral items in the first place. They were only properly farmable from Helltide, and when you did that, you didn't get anywhere near enough for the time spent on it. Like, it gave you like 1 item's worth of masterworking at most for a full farmed Helltide, a full hour of farming. Before the first weekend after the expansion release, the developers sent us a hotfix that not only tripled these rates, but significantly increased other sources too, to the point that now I just don't ever struggle with Forgotten Souls to begin with. But because I have a lot of Forgotten Souls, I can do more masterworking, and while Obdicite is of course a required farm too, that is expected, that's the one that you want to be the thing that people are farming, preventing masterworking, because there are rewarding and enjoyable activities specifically intended to drop this item in reasonable amounts. But when you have enough Obdicite, you then quickly end up running out of of either rawhide or iron chunks, depending on whether you've been rolling your masterworks on armor or weapons and jewelry. I have really strict goals for my armor masterworking, more so than I do for my jewelry or weapon, and this has resulted in me having 18,000 iron chunks and fluctuating anywhere from 0 to like 300 rawhide before I go and craft with it again. After 2.0.3, they had a somewhat minor looking patch note that said that there was a bug with the automatic drops of certain crafting materials, and what this theoretically meant, and has proven to do so now that we can play it, is it's in relation to the auto-salvaged gear system. When you are in Torment difficulties, any blue or yellow items that would be dropping, aside from the bug with the seething opal of equipment, instead are turned directly into their salvaged materials, and then you pick them up. The bug with this, though, is that it wasn't scaling with difficulty tier, and now it is, with of course the largest difference being on Torment 4, but the unfortunate part of this is that it seems to have a relatively little effect in the grand scheme of things with the amount that we're sort of struggling to get this resource. Of course, we're only a few hours after the patch hit at this point, but so far, at least Whispers of the Dead, Nightmare Dungeons, and Lair bosses just don't seem to be dropping a whole lot more of these salvage materials, even up on Torment 4, which is where this will theoretically have had the largest impact. So this doesn't seem to be fixed really, it is minorly better, just not in very noticeable ways, and will still definitely be a bottleneck, so hopefully it sees further changes in the coming days. The next big change in this patch then was just a full, essentially, rework of the Realmwalker seasonal activity to just make it feel much more active and a lot faster paced. Before the patch, the main complaints were it took too long for the actual Realmwalker to get to its endpoint on the map, and that killing the bonus enemies that came with it didn't really feel like it helped you a whole lot, but also, if you did enough, it literally would stop spawning more enemies, which made it feel really just not interactive at all and a bit boring. After the patch though, the Realmwalker moves faster by default, the waves never stop spawning, and when you kill the Guardian Elites that pop up after each bar fills, it actually speeds up the Realmwalker's movement each time now, trying to reward you for killing with a speed increase to the activity as a whole. In practice, this just feels a lot better. Before, it took 4 or 5 minutes for the Realmwalker to reach its endpoint and stop moving and become fightable. Now, when you're actually killing the enemies and stuff like that, getting the speed increases, it's about 2 minutes. It's literally half the length of the activity, if not faster. It'll take doing a few of these to see if it really is just perfect now, but it's undeniably a massive improvement over the way that this felt before. Then the final major thing that I wanted to cover here is a pretty simple question, but I don't want to go into a full deep dive on it. But is Spiritborn's evade build dead after the patch? And the answer is yes, but only if you really wanted to push actual higher difficulty content with it too. The version of this that doesn't use Sepizantech but instead refills evades through the exhilaration aspect does do a ton more damage than the Sepizantech version, so the fact that you evade less frequently is less completely crippling. It can still exist on like Torment 4, but it just doesn't feel anywhere close to the same, sadly. And I know more than anything it was the feeling of this build that people liked, not the actual numbers. Instead of the evade making it feel like you were just rolling through the whole open world like a race car, now it's small hops with gaps between that feel more like a family sedan. The damage per evade is still pretty solid. The damage for each evade that you do has not changed. It's the same amount, you can hit for billions, but with the time between evades increasing so much, and you can visually see the difference very simply. And the overall effect is that it's just much weaker than it was before as far as the damage output, but that it also is just less fast and less fun to play. I understand this was clearly a bug enabling this to happen, and anything that affects people's performance and causes server lag or game crashes needs to be fixed. There is no denying that. But it's unfortunate when the cost associated with it is a generally fun build just sort of being taken out to pasture. This needs to be done. Sure, it did need to happen, but it is still also sad. Both can be true, and in this scenario, they are. If you're someone who has been in love with the evade build and how it works and are now looking for a new home for your Spiritborn, my current recommendation is Crushing Hand. We had a build video go up on the channel for this yesterday. You fling around, teleporting to enemies and doing massive AoE damage. The only sad part comparatively is that you need an enemy to jump to hit the same speed as evade build, rather than just being able to do it like when traversing through the open world through just open corridors. Overall though, Spiritborn as a whole has remained mostly unhit. The rest of the class and the rest of the builds haven't been affected by this specific change. In fact, a lot of these stronger Spiritborn builds have actually been buffed and made stronger, and before the pitchforks start going up, consider that without the current Spiritborn bugs that are making it stronger, the class would actually be doing literally hundreds of times less damage than it is. So what they are doing, at least for now, is is removing the bugs that keep it from being as strong as it can be, so that it'll feel less painful when they remove the bugs that are making it way stronger than it should be. And hopefully when all of these bugs are fixed, both positive and negative, it'll land somewhere nicely around where the other classes are right now. The bug in particular, to be specific then, is before 2.0.3, the chance to hit twice affix on the Rod of Kepeleke weapon unique just did nothing at all for a few skills like Quill Volley, and was only partially effective for a few of the other core skills, like Crushing Hand was only getting one bonus circle if it triggered instead of getting both, which it now does. So after this patch, these already popular and strong builds will be doing more damage because this affix is now working properly, and this is the reason why. That just about does it for today then, everyone. All of the important parts of patch 2.0.3 and how they actually feel and interact now that we have had the patch go live and have had a bit of time to mess around and test with it too. I hope this helps you out in understanding these changes, and hopefully we get some further fixes over the next few days too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.